And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news, and I am joined today by a gentleman. I'm going to let him introduce himself. Some of you folks out there, if you're watching a video, you might notice that we're trying something new with our camera. So go ahead, sir. Introduce yourself.
This is David Gray, news writer with the Livingston Parish News, and yes, the camera is straight ahead of me. Much different than in the past.
Yes. Usually we were kind of off to the side. We're probably going to be changing up the full setup in the room here in the podcast studio at the Livingston Parish News. But for the time being, this is the new thing that we are trying. We apologize for missing last week. Just had some scheduling conflicts between myself, David, and Rob. But we're here this week. We're going to talk about one thing from last week, which is going to come up at the Parish Council tomorrow night, Thursday. And then we are going to kind of get into the news of this week. So first and foremost, we're talking about injection wells and injection well moratoriums and carbon capture. And it's very complicated. There's a lot that goes into it. And of course, they will be talking about it tomorrow night. So go ahead and kind of catch us up with what we missed last week, David, and then talk about what's going on tomorrow night.
Well, yeah, I think the last podcast we talked about them introducing this moratorium, year-long moratorium on Class 6 injection wells, or excuse me, just injection wells in general. During the last council meeting, they made that specific to Class 6 injection wells, or the ones where they're pumping carbon dioxide emissions under the ground. Because as you know, there's two sites that affect Livingston Parish. You have one in north of Holden that'll, like I said, affect the north side of the parish. Then there is another company that is going to store carbon from a plant in Ascension Parish and put that under Lake Maurepas. So Parish Council passed a moratorium on those for a year, which is kind of a moot point because each of the two separate carbon capture hubs, they don't intend on storing any of the carbon dioxide emissions until at the earliest 2025. And I believe the other company under Lake Maurepas is planning for 2026. So kind of a moot point, but that is something just to, make sure that the parish has some time to get its own ordinances in place for Class 6 injection wells, because there's nothing regulating that in the parish right now. This is kind of a new thing that has cropped up on the parish in the last year, and a lot of residents are very concerned about that, what it's going to do to the water table, to the environment, all that. And Livingston Parish, especially those areas that we're talking about, are kind of rural areas, so these homeowner property owners just have some concerns, and the parish council is, they're also with them on those concerns, especially with the air products one with the plant in Ascension Parish. They're kind of arguing that, Ascension Parish is going to get this money from this $4.5 million plant, and Livingston Parish is, as one councilman said, we're going to be the dumping ground to get nothing out of it. So there's a lot of concern with that. So they're just going to try to pass some sort of ordinance that, might be able to give them some benefit from being a carbon capture hub, but we'll see how that goes. The only problem with the Lake Maurepas one is that is technically state land, so the parish council really didn't have much of a say in that. So that actually attended a meeting of the State Energy and Mineral Board last week where that was kind of discussed. Some of the representatives from Air Products, who is planning this $4.5 million plan in Ascension Parish, were there, as well as a couple of the councilmen and some of the residents who, frequent Lake Maurepas. It's a very important lake to a lot of fishermen, who, depend on it for their livelihood, recreational, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, tomorrow they're going to be talking about Class 5 injection wells, which is, I believe, the data collecting well, which has already started for the carbon capture hub in Holden, and they're about to start the seismic activity in Lake Maurepas whenever they get permitted for that. As of last week, they still had not been permitted for that. So yeah, this is just something that will be written about, talked about for many, many months.
Yeah, and it's something new, not really something that anybody locally is used to dealing with. So it's going to be interesting to see, how those things pan out going forward. Pulling forward now into this week, a lot of forwards. First and foremost, let's stick with the parish council. During their last meeting, when they had that introduction of that ordinance, they were also visited by the Livingston Parish assessor to discuss the Board of Review. And so you have the results of that. That is, if you don't know what that is A lot of that is, if you do not know what the Board of Review is, it is the parish councilman sit up there and get a report from the Livingston Parish assessor on what the new assessed value of total property is in Livingston Parish. And of course, there are several variations of that. There is the total value. There's value minus homestead exemption and things like that. So walk us through that, David.
Yeah, Jeff Taylor made that presentation, and basically the parish increased by $18 million in taxable value, which he said is actually a pretty good, pretty solid number for a non-reassessment year. I believe the next reassessment year is in 2024, I think he said. It's after, not next year, but the year after. So he said that was a very good increase, considering it was a non-reassessment year. So that was pretty much the gist of it. Just kind of, he gave a breakdown of the numbers, and we won't bore you all with the numbers, but but essentially the total the total assessed value in Livingston Parish is $915 million, and then you take away homestead exemption. Golly, that's a lot of tongue twisters. It's about $260 million right there. So the total taxable value is $655 million, which is up from $637 million last year. So that's how you get the $18 million increase in taxable value.
So, and of course, it's important to mention to people, you're out of time for this year, but in the future, if you ever want to contest your assessed value, the books open up at the beginning of August and stay open for the month. You'll need to go to the assessor's office to check what they have valued your house at, or you can go to the assessor's website, go to their Atlas link, where you can look at your particular parcel or parcels if you are a multi-property owner, and see what they valued your property at.
I believe he said they only had one appeal this year. It was for a property that was listed, I believe, at $7 million, and the property owner was attesting that it should have been $4 million. Mr. Taylor didn't give his reasoning for why he felt like it should have been much less, but they ended up dropping the appeal. So that was the only appeal I believe that his office received this year.
So, and that's the process if you ever want to appeal in the future. Moving on, the chamber continues to host forums for political candidates. They recently had one for school board candidates. I believe it's 4 seats are contested, or is it 3?
4?
4 seats.
4 seats.
4 seats are contested. So walk us through which seats those were and what those individuals had to say.
So this was, like you said, it was hosted by the chamber. It's the seats in District 4, 7, 8, and 9. District 4 is the Denham area that is currently held by Bradley Harris, and he is seeking re-election, and he is being faced, his opposition is Jeff Pendergrass. And then District 7, that is the seat by Bo Graham, who is a former school board president, chose not to seek re-election. So you will have a new board member there regardless, and that is Caitlin Lockhart Cockerham and Ryan Pope. In District 8, that's another one that was held by Frank Perino, but then he resigned earlier this year. So that will be a new board member, as well as Ron McMorris and Monica Sullivan. And then District 9, which is the Albany area, that is currently held by Devin Gregoire, who is seeking re-election, and he is facing Steve Link in that. So, in District 8, that's kind of the southern part of the parish, French Settlement, Maurepas, Springfield areas. So, those are the 4 seats up for re-election. The other 5 seats drew one qualifier, so that qualifier won those seats. But yeah, I mean, it was just a chance for people to get to know their candidates. It was kind of, they followed this format where they gave each one 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and they asked them a series of questions where they got 1 minute to respond to each question. So this week we kind of ran the introduction, giving each one their own separate section, just kind of their background a little bit. Like I said, you have a couple that are already school board members, Bradley Harris and Devin Gregoire. Then you have some that have worked in education, Monica Sullivan, Steve Link, Ryan Pope. I believe he was another one who served in education before going to the private sector. And then you have some who aren't who haven't been involved with education. They just wanted to get out there and try to make a difference. Ron McMorris, Caitlin Lockhart Cockerham, Jeff Pendergrass. Those are the people who don't really have a background in education, but they still wanted to get out there. And then like you said, you still have the people who are trying to continue holding on to those seats and want to continue the good that they felt that they have done in Bradley Harris and Devin Gregoire. So just kind of a way for them to introduce themselves. And like I said, next week we're going to run. They had a series of questions that they were asked. Mostly pertaining to, well, what's important to parents, how would they attract new businesses to Livingston Parish to kind of help put some more funds into the schools. A big one was solving the teacher shortage. That's one that, even in their intros, a lot of them addressed, because that is kind of the topic right now, is how do you, I know school overcrowding, especially Livingston Parish, has been a topic, but something that's really, and that'll be, kind of affected by that, is this teacher shortage that is going on right now, because it's kind of a scary outlook when you think that there, 10 or 15 years, there might not be enough teachers for the students, to kind of go back to over the summer when school board president Cecil Harris would say that, some of these job fairs that would get hundreds of prospective teachers from Southeastern LSU drew a few dozen. So it's a very alarming trend. So next week we'll run kind of their answers to that. Each of them gave their own different answers, but yeah, it was just kind of nice just to get to know some of these candidates, hear what they had to say. And Buddy Mincy, Representative Buddy Mincy, was there, who was a former school board president. And he kind of talked, he was happy to see that there's that enthusiasm for wanting to get into public service. So yeah, next week we'll see what you will read about what they had to say to those answers, to those questions. Excuse me.
So, sticking with the schools real quick, the Livingston Parish school system has a national merit semifinal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us all about this student.
Mackenzie Himmel. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but yeah, she is one of 235 seniors in Louisiana that were named National Merit semifinalists. And Livingston Parish has had a few for the last few years, and Live Oak High especially. They've had multiple National Merit semifinalists and some finalists. I believe it was 2 years ago that Live Oak had 2 finalists, as well as Denham. They both had 2 finalists. But she is the only one this year who was named a semifinalist. Like I said, one of 235, and I believe that's like she's in the group of the top 1% of all high school seniors to be named, to have this academic achievement, the good enough academic achievements to be named a semifinalist. So the finalists, I believe, will be named in the spring, and then it'll be whittled down to the actual winners. And I believe last year there was one in Springfield who was actually named a National Merit Scholarship winner. I believe it was from Springfield, either last year or the year before. But yeah, so that was the news on that one, Mackenzie Himmel. So we'll wait to see if she gets to be named a finalist next year.
So, and congratulations to her. Just that award, or that sort of recognition in and of itself, is a big deal. Last but certainly not least, Registrar of Voters in Livingston Parish, Jarrett Andrews, is pushing the, I guess you could call it, the National Register to Vote week. And so tell us a little bit about that. And people are running out of time. If you want to vote in the midterm, I believe you have to register to vote by the end of this week, or you will not be eligible to vote in the midterms.
Yes, that's his big push. The voter registration week ends September 23rd, which is this Friday, and yeah, that's just his push. He sent an email out last week just trying to get the word out, because they got some big, we just talked about the school board election, which that's a very important election, but you also have some national seats that are open, and then as well as there's a lot of local races in Denham, Albany, Killian. I believe that's it. But yeah, you have some, and then you have also some constitutional amendments that people need to vote on. So yeah, I mean, this was a big week. They wanted to get that out there, because it's less than 2 months until we'll be going to the ballots. So I mean, it's sneaking up on us. I was getting ready, or thinking about that this week. I was like, oh man, it's less than 2 months until we'll be having to talk to all of these candidates. Whenever they, when you talk to the winners afterwards and the losers. So yeah, you got to register now, basically.
Right, you're running out of time. So, well, thank you, sir, for taking the time this morning. I'm going to let you introduce yourself before we get out of here.
Hey, this is David Gray, news writer with the Livingston Parish News.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. This is Around Livingston, where David and I talk about what's going on here in the parish. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays. That's $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.